Welcome to another creepy episode of the Wandering Road Podcast. I'm your host, Chris, and for today's episode, we're going to cover an interesting legend that comes out of the Dominican Republic. And this creature that we're going to be talking about today is called El Baca, or in English you could say the Baca. And that's with B as in boy, not to be confused with vaca, which means cow. So I just wanted to make that distinction early for anyone that understands Spanish. I'm not saying vaca, I'm saying Baca, with a B as in boy. So El Baca is a legend that comes from the Dominican Republic, and generally the island of Hispaniola, because there's actually legends of El Baca coming from Haiti as well. So El Baca, it has a presence in both Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So the legend goes that the Baca is a diabolical creature that people conjure up to obtain wealth and property. Any type of riches that you want, you would summon a Baca to assist you with that. On top of that, if you're already a wealthy landowner, you could also summon a Baca to protect your land and property from being trespassed or stolen from. It's widely thought on the island that when a person suddenly gains prosperity, it's because they summoned a Baca to assist them in gaining that wealth. So the belief in the Baca, or El Baca, stems from the colonial era. And you could find its origins coming from African groups that were brought to the island as slaves. So essentially, whatever beliefs that they had, you'll find that certain beliefs on the island are a mixture of Catholicism, voodoo, and other Afro-spiritual beliefs. The popular legend is heavily rooted in the minds of Dominicans, given that the island itself is one giant melting pot because of colonialism. Like I said before, you have all of these different beliefs and these ideas coming together, and that's where they share, different legends and demonic creatures or evil spiritual beings. All of these ideas are interchanged. That's why you'll find Dominicans who are Catholic, you'll find that the belief in the supernatural of different supernatural beings are drastically different from, let's say, a Catholic person that's from Italy. Though they would share same similarities with all of the Catholic beliefs, but when it comes to the supernatural stories, there are stark differences in beliefs of specific demons and creatures. So you might be asking, what does this thing look like? How do I know I've encountered a Baca? Well, unfortunately, there have been many descriptions of this creature. So one can't really say that a Baca has a specific look to it. Some say that they come in the form of a black cat, a black dog, a bull, or other types of animals. Essentially, you could say that the Baca is a shape-shifting creature. But one thing to note, that the trait that they all seem to have, no matter what form they take, is the red burning eyes that they say is made of hellfire. And they also are known to drag around really heavy chains. So whenever they're walking around and you hear like heavy chains dragging along with it, that's kind of like your indication, like, okay, I see this type of animal or whatever it is. It's black in color. It has deep red eyes, but I'm not sure if it's just a mutation. But if you hear the chains dragging, yeah, you might want to run in the opposite direction. So given that we kind of have an idea of what this creature looks like, you might want to ask, where does it come from? How do you get this creature? Like, how does someone randomly ends up with this demon dog or this demon cat to come and get riches for them and to protect their property? Well, some say that in order to obtain the shape-shifting demon, that being El Baca, you're required to make a pact with the devil himself. And when you make that pact with the devil, he's going to ask you for something. You don't just get whatever you want whenever you make a pact with the devil. It can range from a piece of your land. If you have multiple homes and businesses, the devil might want a piece of that as well. He might want your livestock. And that's if you catch him on a good day. If you catch him on a bad day, the story goes that the devil may ask for someone close to you to suffer from some sort of illness or disease, or outright die so he can take their soul. And the way that they would die is mainly by committing suicide for some random reason. Others claim that another way to get a Baca is by planting an egg on Good Friday and then taking it out to hatch 7 Fridays later. So you would plant the egg on Good Friday, and 7 Fridays later, so essentially 7 weeks later, you dig it up, and there you should have a hatchling of El Baca. Some other people say that you would keep the egg warm under your armpit for those 7 Fridays. So instead of actually burying it, you would take that egg and you would put it under your armpit. How they don't crush it, I have no idea. But that's what you would do. You would again wait for the 7 Fridays, and then when you crack the egg open, you should have a hatchling of the Baca. But one thing that you should take note of, especially when you make a pact to get a Baca, the pact is irreversible. It's impossible to be annulled. Once you make this pact, there is no going out of it. Like, you cannot get rid of it. If the owner of the Baca fails to comply with the pact, the wealth and well-being granted will start to become diluted. Their family members will start dying off in the most horrific ways possible. So kind of a buyer beware. Like, yeah, you'll get all of these riches, but there's a catch that comes with it. There's always a catch. When it comes to a creature like the Baca, of course I had to ask my mom about it. My mom was born and raised in the countryside in the late 60s and 70s of the Dominican Republic. There, when she was growing up, she said there was always talks of brujas, bacas, cucos, anything to scare the children. She's heard it. My mom said that she never encountered a Baca, but she did share with me that as a child, her mom did warn her about potentially encountering one of these creatures. So my grandmother always warned my mom not to trespass on anyone's land because they may have a Baca protecting it. And according to legend, and according to some people that have encountered a Baca, the Baca ate humans. And most commonly, it fed on children. Because if you think about it, if you're growing up in that time period, especially if you're from a country like the Dominican Republic, where my mom pretty much didn't grow up with much, most of your time was spent outside. And what do you do while you're outside? You tend to trespass on other people's property. You know, just playing around, just kids running around. Like you don't really pay attention to property lines, as she told me. And every now and then, some kids will say they encountered some creepy thing or some sort of creepy animal. Could the Baca potentially be some sort of guard dog that everyone refers to as some sort of demonic type of entity because that guard dog is just protecting the land of their owners? Quite possibly. But if you speak to Dominicans, most of them will know of a Baca encounter or have a story of a Baca encounter that they've either had or one of their close friends or relatives have had. And the only unfortunate thing about this, I believe this tends to be more of a traditional type of thing. You won't find many written accounts about El Baca. Most of these stories are passed down orally and rarely documented. Like, I know personally for me, my mom has shared some creepy things that she's encountered, that her mom has encountered while growing up on the island that no one's ever written down. And a lot of my family members that grew up in the Dominican Republic, they have their share of creepy stories as well. And nobody tends to write these down. It would be a good idea for them to write it down, you would think. It's one of those things that's really difficult to navigate because in doing my research on this paranormal creature, it was really, really difficult to find any written accounts. The most common thing you'll run into is that you'll have people that write articles about the Baca, and what they'll do is they'll actually tell you, similar to what I did, they'll tell you what it is, where it potentially came from, how it affects humans, what it eats, what it does, what its purpose is. But you'll never find someone actually sharing their own personal Baca story. Now, is that because the person that unfortunately encountered the creature didn't live to tell the tale? That's within the realm of possibility. But in my research of this topic, I did come across an interesting YouTube podcast from a channel called Cristo TV Oficial, where one of their guests, Leonardo, they recount a tale of a Baca. Unfortunately, the video is in Spanish, so if you are a Spanish speaker and you're into that type of stuff, I would definitely go recommend watching that video. Again, the YouTube channel is Cristo TV Oficial. The story in the video goes, Leonardo shares a story about how his sister ended up marrying a man that had a Baca. I believe this man had some sort of wealth, and obviously the Baca has to always be fed. And according to this story, the pact that this gentleman made with either the Baca itself or Satan himself was that it would be fed his children. So yes, there were a couple of instances where Leonardo's sister was pregnant with her husband's child. She gives birth and they take the child away from her to go feed it to the Baca. This happened twice, according to Leonardo, and the poor woman went crazy. I did mention earlier that there is no way to get rid of El Baca once you obtain one. I couldn't believe it, so I did some sort of research to see, if there was any way to break this pact with this type of creature. In some of the YouTube videos that I saw about this creature, again, unfortunately, they're in Spanish, so I can't really share any audio clips here. They pretty much say that you really can't break the pact. Once you make the pact, it lasts forever. But what's even more creepy is if you think you're safe if you avoid making pacts with the devil, think again, because Bacas can be inherited. Yes, you heard that correctly. They can be inherited. So let's say, for example, I know someone that makes a pact with a Baca, right? And they're, let's say, a first cousin or a second cousin. When that person dies, the person that makes the pact, they die, the Baca will pass on to their children. If that person doesn't have any children, it'll go to their next of kin. So if you're in line in the next of kin to that individual that made a pact with El Baca or the devil to get a Baca, it'll come to you. And you have to fulfill that pact to a T. Because if you don't, it'll turn on you. It'll kill you. It'll eat you. It'll eat your family. It'll kill your family. All these terrible things will start happening to you. And what's even worse than that thought is, according to legend, Bacas are tied to the land as well. So Bacas can be passed through inheritance of land or the purchase of the land. And the debt that the devil has on that land passes on to the purchaser. So let's imagine you go to buy a piece of land in the Dominican Republic because you really want to live there. And the locals tell you hey, you might not want to do that because a Baca lives here. The previous owner had a Baca. You might want to heed that warning because that Baca will now become your responsibility. So tread carefully. What I also found interesting after reading the few articles about El Baca and other superstitious beliefs in these paranormal creatures in the Dominican Republic was that it's not just a belief that's relegated to the folks living out in the countryside. Because when you think of these superstitions, it's always correlated to folks living out in the country. They're very isolated. And these stories come up of these creatures and things as a way to explain things that people probably didn't understand at the time. But what I did find really interesting, like I said before, it's not just folks that live out in the country that believe in this. Even with all of the education and scientific explanations we may have for things, people in important positions of power or very high-ranking positions share these beliefs as well. And you're talking about doctors, lawyers, teachers, and even government officials. So it's not just a thing that's just, hey, it's a random type of belief that's only people from this area believe this. When it comes to El Baca and just all of the supernatural creatures or beliefs on the island itself, everybody tends to believe in them. Of course, you'll have your people that say logically, this doesn't make any sense. These things can't possibly exist. But for a majority of the people out there, they do tend to believe in this stuff because of what they heard and other people's experiences that were probably shared with them. But yeah, I did find that very interesting that even people that one would say are very educated through higher education still hold these beliefs. So, what do you all make of El Baca? Are thousands of people on the island of the Dominican Republic making this up? Are people from Haiti making this up? Or is there some sort of validity to their claims on what they're seeing? Who knows? But something to think about the next time you go out to buy a house or a piece of land. Be mindful of El Baca, because your soul might be at stake. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of The Wandering Road. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and share with your friends. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to you joining me for the next one.